In this multi-volume series that is a compilation of work I have previously done, I am sharing suggestions and information viewers have shared with me in their journeys and explorations, and these typically bring up related subjects that I have encountered in my own experience and research. My name is Michelle Gibson. I'm going to start with viewer recommendations of places in Tasmania. First, the Walls of Jerusalem National Park, a World Heritage Site and popular bushwalk destination for hikers. Walls of Jerusalem in Tasmania? We are told the park got its name from geological features resembling the walls of Jerusalem. Let's take a tour, starting at Herod's Gate. Lake Salome is adjacent to Herod's Gate. The Pool of Bethesda is southeast of Lake Salome, between the lake and what is called the Temple and Mount Jerusalem. King David's Peak and what is known as Solomon's Buttress or Throne are on the other side of the west wall, across from Mount Herod and Lake Salome. The east wall runs between Mount Jerusalem and the Temple, to mention a few of the features of the Walls of Jerusalem National Park. I believe the truth of the ancient civilization was hidden in plain sight, and have come to believe that ancient infrastructure has been called natural in order to cover it up. For comparison of similarity of appearance, there is a boulder field on King David's Peak in the Walls of Jerusalem National Park in Tasmania on the left, and a feature actually called the Boulder Field on Longs Peak in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park on the right. Was there a Jerusalem in more than one place? I found a reference a while back that said the original Jerusalem was in Peru, but that it was called Jerusalem or Hierosalem, and was said to have been built by the Egyptians as their capital, and is where they laid the cord in Cusco, and that the Temple of Heru in the Egyptian language, which is Medu-Neter, was Pra-Heru, Peru. And was there a hidden connection between the Egyptians and Israelites that we have not been told about? And does laying the cord pertain to the Segway system? The Segway system, of which the Coricancha in Cusco was the center, the most important temple in the Inca Empire, involved at least 42 ley lines radiating out from this center. Literature available on this topic suggests that it referred to the Inca Empire, which was partitioned into 4 divisions, and the empire called itself Tehuan Tensuyu, or 4 parts, and the boundary line separating the 4 also radiated out from the Coricancha itself. A chronicler of the time, Bernabe Kobe, wrote that the segways were conceived as straight lines diverging radially from the Coricancha, the symbolic center of the world, and extending out into the cosmos. This picture of me was taken at the Coricancha on a trip I took to Cusco with a group in 2018. Those energetic effects the camera picked up on at the Coricancha only occurred in that one room in the whole place. ZG sent me a couple of things related to Machu Picchu, described as a 15th century Inca citadel located 50 miles or 80 kilometers northwest of Cusco, first visited by Europeans in the 19th century. He shared this footage with me that he took on a 4-day hike on the way to Machu Picchu many years ago, and brought the pyramidal shape he caught on film to my attention. ZG also shared a link with the before and after photos of the excavation of Machu Picchu, with the before photo having been taken by explorer Hiram Bingham before the major excavation of the site began in 1912. Machu Picchu is known to have a number of astronomical alignments as well, which is also the case with the pyramids and Sphinx on the Giza Plateau in Egypt. One more thing. It is interesting to note that the Rothschilds purchased Jerusalem in what became Israel in 1829, and subsequently acquired considerable land in Palestine in the 1800s and early 1900s. Just a few things to think about what might be really going on here, as opposed to what we have been told. The other place in Tasmania that was brought to my attention by WS is called the Candlestick. The Candlestick, a popular destination for rock climbers, is described as a 197-foot or 60-meter high dolerite sea cliff. This photo of the Candlestick got my attention, It sure looks like there's a solar alignment with the candlestick in between the surrounding cliffs. Coincidence? Let's take a look at some other places. Here's the moon in alignment with what is called Cathedral Rock in Sedona, Arizona. And another solar alignment with the Two Brothers Rock at the island group known as Fernando de Noronha off the coast of Brazil near Natal. This is what is called Chimney Rock and Companion Rock in Colorado. There is a major lunar standstill event at Chimney Rock and Companion Rock in Colorado that takes place every 18 years, with a window of a 3-year period, where the moon rises on the eastern horizon, and when the moon comes as far north as it possibly can, it is framed in the gap between Chimney Rock and Companion Rock. This cyclic event is visible from the nearby Great House. Chimney Rock is described as a Chacoan outlier, a remnant of what was named the Chaco culture after Chaco Canyon, and was a network of archaeological sites primarily in northwestern New Mexico that dominated the region between 900 AD and 1300 AD. It is interesting to note the similarities between these structures at Chimney Rock in Colorado on the left, Sacsayhuaman in Peru on the top right, and Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon on the bottom right. Here is an example of a sun dagger at Fajada Butte in Chaco Canyon. There are 3 large stone slabs there leaning against the cliff, which channel light and shadow markings onto 2 spiral petroglyphs in the cliff wall that form daggers of light as solstices and equinoxes. Here are a couple of what would be considered more modern astronomical alignments. Manhattan Hinge is an annual event during which the setting sun or rising sun is aligned with the east-west street grid of Manhattan on dates evenly spaced around the summer solstice and winter solstice. Recently, local historian John Fitzgerald discovered that the Basilica of St. John the Baptist in St. John's, in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, was positioned so that the sunrise of the winter and summer solstice align with very specific stained glass windows. He found out that on the winter solstice, the sun rises almost directly in front of the building, and at the summer solstice, it goes down through the center window in the back of the building, behind the altar. J.P., who lives on Estonia's island of Saaremaa, that divides the Baltic Sea from the Gulf of Riga, provided me his findings of a triangulation between the island of Saaremaa, the island of Fernando de Noronha off the coast of Brazil, and Port Victoria, the capital of the island republic of the Seychelles, located off the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean, and at the center of the triangle is a volcano in N'Djamena, the capital of the African country of Chad. I found a triangulated relationship a while back between the islands of Bermuda and Fernando de Noronha in the Atlantic Ocean and the Channel Islands in the English Channel. All 3 places have a high concentration of star forts for their small sizes. SC suggested that I look into Bisbee, Arizona. Bisbee is located 11 miles or 18 kilometers north of the border with Mexico. Bisbee was founded as a mining town in 1880 that grew around the Copper Queen mine in the Mule Mountains, the most productive copper mine in Arizona in the early 1900s. The Copper Queen mine was acquired by Phelps Dodge in 1885 when the Import-Export Company was expanding into the western frontier of North America in search of metals needed for industrialization. Phelps Dodge operated mines and railroads to carry its products. This building was the Phelps Dodge headquarters in Bisbee, and today is the Bisbee Mining and Historical Museum. Phelps Dodge was behind the Bisbee deportation on July 12th of 1917, in which approximately 1,300 striking miners, their supporters, and citizen bystanders were illegally kidnapped by a posse of 2,000 and deported 200 miles or 320 kilometers away to a location in New Mexico, where they were unloaded and warned not to return to Bisbee. They were relocated with the help of the U.S. Army. The reason was presented as decreasing threats to U.S. interests during World War I because the demand for copper was high. Though an investigation conducted in 1917 by a Presidential Mediation Commission concluded that deportation was illegal and without any authority in law, no convictions ever took place. An interesting side note from past research: Marcellus Hartley Dodge Sr. was the president of the Remington Arms Company, a company started and owned by his grandfather, Marcellus Hartley, and a family member associated with Phelps Dodge. Marcellus Hartley Dodge Sr. married Geraldine Rockefeller, the daughter of William Rockefeller Jr., a co-founder of Standard Oil, and she was estimated to have her own fortune of $100 million, and they were said to be the wealthiest newlyweds in the country upon their marriage. Other things of note in Bisbee: compare the similarity in appearance of Main Street in Bisbee on the top left, the Kasbah in Old Algiers in Algeria on the top right, Stone Street in the financial district of Lower Manhattan on the bottom left, and Hillgrove Street in St. Helier, the capital of Jersey in the Channel Islands, on the bottom right. The annual Bisbee 1000, the Great Stair Climb, in October every year involves a 4.5-mile or 7.25-kilometer course featuring 9 staircases, totaling over 1,000 steps connected by winding roads. It is the only outdoors stair climb in the United States and considered to be one of the most unusual events in the world. The Works Progress Administration, during Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal-era programs during the Great Depression, were given the credit for building the stairways over old mule paths worn into the terrain from the town's mining past. Tombstone is located just north of Bisbee. Tombstone is called the most authentic Western town left in the United States, where lawmen Wyatt Earp, Virgil Earp, and Doc Holliday faced off against cowboy outlaws Ike and Billy Clanton and Tom and Frank McLaury in the gunfight at the OK Corral. While Tombstone today looks like a Hollywood movie set, historic photos seem to tell a different story, with the historic courthouse in Tombstone said to have been built in 1882, showing a tall rod at the top. While the building still stands today as part of the Tombstone Courthouse State Historic Site, the tall rod isn't there anymore. This is a historical photo of the interesting-looking Cosmopolitan Hotel in Tombstone back in the day, with folks standing on what appears to be small makeshift balconies beside outside second-floor doors with otherwise nowhere else to go. The year given for its opening was 1879. And the Cosmopolitan Hotel burned down in Tombstone's devastating fire of 1882, which destroyed the town's business corridor for the second time in 2 years. I also found this historic photo of the old Birdcage Theater, said to have first opened in December of 1881 and operated as a theater until it closed in 1892, during which time it gained a reputation as one of the wickedest theaters between New Orleans and San Francisco. Today, the Birdcage Theater building still stands and is a popular tourist attraction in Tombstone, where you can take self-guided tours during the day and guided ghost tours at night. This photo was taken in 1939 in front of the offices for the Tombstone Epitaph, the oldest continually published newspaper in Arizona, founded in January of 1880. The definition of epitaph is a phrase or form of words written in memory of a person who has died, especially as an inscription on a tombstone. Just have to wonder if there is a double meaning hidden here. Interesting to note that the King Solomon Lodge No. 5 has had a presence in Tombstone since at least 1881, in the largest standing adobe structure still in existence in the southwest United States, and which also served in its history as an opera house, theater, recital hall, and community meeting place. The next place I'm going to take a look at is a place suggested by E.L., the uninhabited Wayag Islands. They are part of what is called the Raja Ampat Regency of the West Papua province of Indonesia, which straddles the equator, and which forms part of the Coral Triangle in the tropical waters around Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, the Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste. The Coral Triangle contains the richest marine biodiversity on Earth. EL visited there on a live-aboard scuba diving trip in which they crossed the equator, and upon entering the island group, she said it felt like she was in an ancient city, that there was something not natural about these islands. She said it's very protected inside the islands, and oceanic mantas use it as a nursery. When I was looking for information about these islands, I encountered descriptions of them like lush vegetation clung to all but the steepest slopes of the towering islands, and their near vertical walls hung over the sea, and a challenging climb up steep limestone cliffs. Outside of what you can expect to see and do on a day trip to these islands, like sharks, barracudas, mantas, the vegetation, coral, scuba diving, and guided hikes, there isn't much information out there on what we could actually be seeing here. So like everywhere else, we have to read between the lines and decide for ourselves what might be there. I have discovered in my own field research that going to a place and experiencing it yields much more information than what can be found in an online search. One thing I do know is that the colonial powers were very interested in this part of the world, and Indonesia became part of the Dutch East Indies starting in the early 1800s, which had been formed from the nationalized trading post of the Dutch East India Company and was one of the most valuable colonies under European rule. The Dutch East India Company was the world's most valuable company of all time, worth $7.9 trillion as a standalone company. Next, JM suggested that I check out South Bass Island and Gibraltar Island in Lake Erie. Both islands are part of Ohio's Put-in-Bay Township in Ottawa County, Ohio. Put-in-Bay is the largest township in Ohio, with an area of 108,344 acres, but with a population of only 763 people in the 2000 census. South Bass Island is a popular recreation destination. The island has a small airport and is otherwise accessed by ferries and charter boats. JM had drawn my attention to Hotel Victory on South Bass Island. This is what we are told about it. The construction of the Hotel Victory was started in 1892 and first opened in 1896, its launch having been covered in newspapers across the United States. It was touted as the biggest hotel in America and had 625 basic guest rooms and 80 suites. It had elevators, an indoor swimming pool, efficient steam heating, and electrical lighting, with 3,000 incandescent light bulbs. Hotel Victory had 2 dining halls that each could serve 1,200 guests in one sitting. For a variety of reasons, the Hotel Victory closed and reopened numerous times during its short existence, as on August 14th of 1919, a fire broke out on the 3rd floor and quickly spread throughout the whole building. The local fire department raced to the scene, only to find out, we are told, that they were outmatched by the immense blaze and unable to contain the fire, resulting in the building's total loss. Today, all that remains of the once grand hotel are parts of the swimming pool's concrete foundations. And the 13-foot or 4-meter tall Victory statue that once stood at the hotel's entrance went to the scrap metal drives of World War II. Perry's Victory and International Peace Memorial is found on an isthmus on South Bass Island. The world's tallest Doric column, it was said to have been constructed by a multi-state commission between 1912 and 1915 after having been selected as the winning design from an international competition. According to our historical narrative, the memorial was established to honor Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry, who successfully commanded those who fought in the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812, and to celebrate long-lasting peace between the United States, Great Britain, and Canada. Gibraltar Island is a small neighbor to South Bass Island. Gibraltar Island was said to have been named for its resemblance to the Rock of Gibraltar. I don't see it, but okay. Gibraltar Island's Cook Castle was said to have been constructed starting in 1864 by American financier J. Cook, who financed the Union side during the Civil War and developed railroads in the United States in the Northwest after the war. J. Cook was considered to be the first major investment banker in the United States. The former Cook Estate on Gibraltar Island hosts the Stone Laboratory of Ohio State University, the oldest freshwater field research station in the United States. QS suggested that I look into the Anza Borrego Desert State Park in California, where there are ancient shell reefs at the Ocotillo Wells, at which location there is the State Vehicular Recreation Area, an area used for off-road driving, and a 4x4 training course. It is from formations with seashells like these that people surmised there was an ancient western interior seaway in what is now America's heartland. The largest state park in California, it occupies 1/5 of San Diego County and parts of Riverside and Imperial counties. Other features of the state park include Split Mountain, described as having been split in half by numerous earthquakes and the power of erosion from the Fish Creek Wash. The Wind Caves are located close to Split Mountain. The Wind Caves, with at least one of them having a nice solar alignment, are described as an awesome sandstone formation, full of wind-eroded pockets. The Arroyo Tapiado mud caves are also found here, in the southern part of the park, and only accessible by a 4x4 vehicle. Entering the caves is described as dangerous, and it is not advised to go after it rains. Mud caves. There is a rock feature called the Pumpkin Patch, which is located near the park, just outside of Ocotillo Wells, a geological phenomenon, we are told, which resulted in rocks that look like pumpkins. The process which created this was described as follows. These are concretions, which form when layers of sediment build up around a nucleus, like a pebble or shell, and then erosion from wind and water expose these rocks. And what is that I see in the background, behind the pumpkin patch? The village of Borrego Springs is completely surrounded by the state park. As an international dark sky community, Borrego Springs has no stoplights and limited lighting at night. This is the Lutheran Church in Borrego Springs, for which I can't seem to find a construction date and history. During World War II, the U.S. Navy and Army had a joint training center east of Borrego Springs called the Borrego Valley Maneuver Area, where there were bombing stations, training stations, and rocket targets on what was described as barren desert, barren mountains, and badlands. This article came out in the San Diego Union Tribune in December of 2009, reporting on a project of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that would have taken place starting in 2010 to look for and remove unexploded bombs and artillery shells in hundreds of square miles of desert. Also, according to this map, the bombing practice area was located between the village of Borrego Springs and the Salton Sea and its military reservation. The Naval Auxiliary Air Station Salton Sea was commissioned in 1942 and decommissioned in 1946, and little remains of it. The Salton Sea, California's largest lake, was a vacation spot in the 1950s and 1960s, with people coming here for swimming, sunbathing, water skiing, and fishing at a place known as the fishing capital of the world. The Salton Sea went from being a lush vacation resort to an environmental disaster, starting in the 1970s when things started to go wrong, like floods that destroyed homes and businesses along the shore, uncirculating water turning saltier than the ocean, and algae blooms killing off the fish. There is a restoration effort planned costing hundreds of millions of dollars that is getting underway this year in 2022. Next, J.I. suggested I look into Adolf Sutro and attractions he founded in San Francisco. Adolf Sutro was a German-American engineer, politician, and philanthropist who was the mayor of San Francisco from 1895 to 1897. He emigrated from Prussia in 1850 and moved to San Francisco in 1851, leaving for Virginia City in Nevada in 1860. He made a fortune in connection with the Comstock lode in Virginia City, the first major discovery of silver ore in the United States. He returned to San Francisco around 1879 and increased his wealth by large real estate investments in San Francisco, including Mount Sutro, Blue Mountain, which is today's Mount Davidson, and Land's End in the Golden Gate recreational area today. This is what we are told in our historical narrative. Adolf Sutro opened his private estate to the public, building the Sutro Baths between 1894 and 1896, of which all that remains today of the Sutro Baths is seen here. And in 1897, Sutro was said to have built the second cliff house in existence at this location, after the first one burned down in 1894, and the second one burned to the ground in 1907. And that the cliff house was rebuilt for the third time and completed in 1909. The building still stands today, but the cliff house was closed at the end of 2020. Other things you will find in the Golden Gate recreational area at San Francisco's Land's End include the Fort Miley Military Reservation, of which Battery Chester was a part, the Octagon House, said to have been built in 1927 as a lookout station, and Mile Rock Beach. This location at San Francisco's Land's End is very close to the Presidio, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Palace of Fine Arts. The Presidio, a park and outdoor recreation hub today, was formerly a U.S. Army post. And the Palace of Fine Arts was said to be the only remaining building from the 1915 Panama Pacific Exhibition, with 9 other palaces said to have been built for the exhibition, having been demolished long ago. SB suggested that I look into the history of San Anselmo in California's Marin County. Marin County is across the Golden Gate Strait from San Francisco. I'll start at San Anselmo and then take a look around at other places in Marin County. In 1874, the North Pacific Coast Railroad added a spur line from San Anselmo to San Rafael, and a year later, the railroad completed a line that ran between Sausalito and Tamales and north to Cazadero by way of San Anselmo, which was known on the railroad maps as Junction until 1883. In 1907, the Northwestern Pacific Railroad took over the regional rail lines, and there was electrified interurbans running between cities, including San Anselmo, and which were abandoned after the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge in 1937. The tracks were replaced with roads, creating what has been described as one of the most haphazard intersections to drive in California. All of the original Northern Pacific Coast, or NPC, railroad trackage has been abandoned. This, for example, was a former tunnel of the NPC Railroad north of Keys Creek near Tamales. SB gave me some noteworthy places to check out there, including the Montgomery Memorial Chapel on the campus of what was the San Francisco Theological Seminary, and what today is the University of Redlands Marin campus. Montgomery Hall and Scott Hall were said to have been completed in 1892 for the seminary and are called West Coast examples of the Richardsonian Romanesque architectural style. SB also mentioned Red Hill. Red Hill was the meeting point of 3 1840s Mexican land grants. Red Hill was owned by Dr. Henry Dubois, who was said to have paid Chinese laborers to cut the zigzag roadway, known as Dubois' Folly, up and over to the Tamalpais Cemetery and Mortuary in San Rafael on the other side of Red Hill, which he was also said to have built and completed in 1879, after an ordinance was passed prohibiting burials within the town limits. Interestingly, Dr. Dubois, born to a wealthy East Coast family and a grandson of John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, wrote in 1880 that he believed there were going to be many burials from San Francisco taking place here. That's interesting. I wonder why he believed that. Like the Tamalpais Cemetery, the Marin Civic Center is located in San Rafael. Frank Lloyd Wright was credited with the design of the main building, but that he died before construction started in 1960, and the construction of it was completed by 1962 under the guidance of his protege, Aaron Green. Within the Civic Center complex, a Hall of Justice, Veterans Memorial Auditorium, and Exhibit Hall were added in the following years, with all completed by 1976. The front entrance to the Civic Center is controlled by a vertical gate of gold anodized metal. Mount Tamalpais is the highest peak in the Marin Hills in Marin County. It is located next to the Golden Gate Recreation Area. Most of the mountain is in protected lands, including the Mount Tamalpais State Park. The Muir Woods National Monument, known for its towering old-growth redwood trees. And contained within it is a place called Cathedral Grove, as well as the notorious Bohemian Grove. The last place I'm going to look at in Marin County is Sausalito, which is adjacent to the Golden Gate National Recreation Area and Mount Tamalpais. Before the Golden Gate Bridge opened to traffic in 1937, Sausalito was a terminus for rail and ferry transportation. The development of Sausalito was promoted by William Richardson, an English mariner who arrived in the area in 1822. Richardson petitioned the Mexican governor at the time for a rancho in the area, which was granted with clear title in 1838. Richardson got himself into financial trouble and ended up signing the title of his land over to an attorney as trustee in the 1850s, and Richardson was dead by 1856. The attorney ultimately maintained control of the Rancho Sausalito and sold the land in the 1860s to a consortium of San Francisco businessmen who partnered to form the Sausalito Land and Ferry Company. In 1868, the Sausalito Land and Ferry Company began running ferry service to San Francisco, with Sausalito serving as a southern terminus and ferry connection to San Francisco for the North Pacific Coast Railroad. The original ferry service operated from 1868 to 1941. Commuter ferry service was started up by Golden Gate Ferries in 1970, along with the start of bus services to the ferry terminal. I am going to end Places and Topics Suggested by Viewers, Volume 11, here in Sausalito. More to come.